Hey, I'm Mel.
Hey, I'm Mol.
Hey, I'm Shahleen.
Welcome to the Poddy Sig.
With GlioBabes.
3 girls.
3 brain tumours.
What could possibly go wrong?
Well, let's find out.
In today's episode, we're joined by Shahleen Hussain, who discusses her brain tumour story and the effect that it's had on her life.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us. We haven't known each other long, have we? I remember seeing your story through the brain tumour research blog and loads of news that you were doing. And I was like, oh my gosh, this person is not only amazing, but talking about so many barriers and important things that people don't really speak about, or we don't see a lot of representation of when it comes to brain tumours at all. So you're doing a big thing. You know, you're sharing. Actually, I'm not even going to go into it. Can you introduce yourself? Can you tell us your name and what your diagnosis is and when you were diagnosed?
So, as Mel said, I'm Shahleen Hussain. I'm 22 and I live in Burnley, Lancashire. I was diagnosed when I was 12 or 13, so year 7. I was diagnosed at first with just migraines, and then I was diagnosed about 5 years later with a low-grade meningioma. I think I'm saying that right. I've had that for I'd say about 10 years now. So I've lived with it for 10 years, and it's just something that no one speaks about in our community. So that could be religious or ethnic community. I felt like certain medical aspects weren't treated similar to other people of different ethnicities. It took longer for me to get my diagnosis, mostly because it was that attention seeking or acting out with my symptoms. It's something that's looked down on, something that's shameful. So I initially got in contact with brain tumour research, and they wanted to publish my story on that Burnley Express and Lancashire Telegraph. So that's when I saw Molly, and that's when I messaged Molly.
Wow. I mean, well, and thank you for what you do, because, you know, like we're trying to do with the podcast, and as you're trying to do, we're reaching people that haven't told their story, that we don't know have brain tumours and are maybe really struggling and in a similar position. So thank you for that.
Okay, so you've mentioned there briefly, Charlene, about how your community and your faith responded to your diagnosis. Can you kind of touch upon that a bit more? Because I know you've mentioned you've had some backlash about speaking about your health within your community. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit more on that for us and tell us what you mean by that in terms of backlash?
So this is just my personal experience. I know a lot of people don't go through this, and not everyone has the same experience. So I just want to clarify that. So my personal experience is when I was diagnosed with epilepsy, not my family essentially, so not my brother, the sisters, or my mum and dad, other family members would say to my dad, she's having seizures because she's possessed. She needs to go to that special, that leaders to get religiously prayed on so she won't be possessed. They didn't really understand what epilepsy was. And there's nothing in their languages to help them understand what epilepsy is and that it's an actual medical condition, and there's nothing outwardly coming to take her away and things like that. There's not like that education barrier. Culturally, people have said to me, I have a nuks, which in Punjabi means a defect, and that's why I've got a brain tumour, or I have sinned and that's why I've got a brain tumour. They don't really understand the medical aspect of it, and people in the community would say to my parents that you shouldn't be speaking about it, she should be hiding, it's something she should be ashamed of, no one will marry her. But now I'm married. My husband, Julian, understands everything. Our granddad had undiagnosed skin cancer, and because they weren't educated in cancer, he died with that and dementia. So it's just something that needs to be more spoken about, something that's not shameful and something that they should be essentially proud of.
Do you think there is a kind of a cultural barrier between people trying to understand necessarily what your diagnosis is and kind of the lack of education, I guess, around that? Do you think that is something that's impacted you?
Yeah, I'd say you're spot on there. One of the cultural barriers is because everything's in English, a lot of them can't understand English. There should be stuff in translation for the elderly or people that don't speak English for them to understand. A lot of the stigmas that they bring over is from when they bring it over from Pakistan, Bangladesh, India. They bring it over from there. They don't have any medical, or even in schools or in faith groups or communities or even mosques, if they spoke about cancer and they spoke about how important it is for people of cancer to speak to other people of different faiths and different languages, that maybe they'd be more open to the ideas of that there's someone medically disabled or ill, and that they should be more comforting towards them and more supporting.
So obviously this is your life now. You know, you live with a brain tumour. and you're talking about it so openly and amazingly for other people to have their help. But is there any sort of restrictions that you find on your day-to-day life and changes to kind of like your choices now, whether that comes under your faith or whether that comes under everyday life? Is there anything that you think is different because of your diagnosis?
So initially, I've always been a big baby, like not the standard little thinny baby. So once I got my migraine tablets, I gained 7 stone in 2 months. So with that brings a lot of backlash within the community, a lot of negative comments about people's weights when no one really knows what's going on because it's not something that they'd link to the cancer. I passed my driving and I was on my way to buy a car. Then my epilepsy came and said no. So I had my driving license taken off me, cut and sent back in the post. So that was like a real reality shock. I didn't get a choice on that. It was something to be snatched away from me, if that makes sense. I lost a lot of my independence. Like I wasn't comfortable going on the train, going into town because of my seizures and brain fog, memory, and getting like overstimulated in town. I felt like that was a lot of the reasons because of the brain tumour. I feel like because I've got a lot of swelling on my brain, so I get swelling on my neck. Even the way I used to do my scarf has changed because it makes me like really insecure about how my head would look in the scarf. I didn't go on to do my PGC because of my chemotherapy and my epilepsy, so that was essentially like my dream job snatched off me. But these are just things that people don't see on a daily basis.
For sure. And you've mentioned something key there, and I haven't really touched upon it much in the podcast, but I have kind of like on social media and in my activism, and how, you do look different. And a big thing for me, I was like, oh, my hair, my hair covers my face. I love wearing my hair down, and I feel like that's a massive thing for me. But, you've said there about your scarf, and that's a barrier that I've never had to face, that I didn't even think of before you spoke about these topics and issues, because we don't hear it spoken about at all, do we?
So like I still get the scarf and that hair comment. Like people say to me, do you have hair under there? And I'm like,
Really?
no. Well, I do have hair now, but at first a lot of my hair fell out. Like I had really thick, long hair. And now I'm getting there with the hair again. But, so it's like both ways. People that don't have cancer will get that comment anyway. But my scarf, is like, my face will look different. Especially if I'm having days where I've had steroids and my face will swell up. My scarf will look squashed like a chipmunk. So it's like different things that other people won't notice unless they're going through it themselves, if that makes sense.
Thank you for sharing that, for sure.
Everything that you're saying, Charlie, and I never would have necessarily even considered about other people going through stuff like that, because obviously I don't wear a headscarf and that isn't my religion and stuff. It kind of never crossed my mind because obviously it wasn't my kind of like everyday thing. So to hear you speak about that so openly on this podcast to us is really powerful, to be honest, and it even gives understanding to us as well of how different people can experience different illnesses or different diagnoses or whatever it may be. We're all a similar age. I mean, I am the oldest, but we won't say that out loud. But I think we're all of a similar age and we're all supposed to be doing like these fun things in life, and then we've just been kind of past this diagnosis, and it is learning to live with that. And like you mentioned there about your driving license, that was something I could relate to, and I felt like my independence was snatched from me. But then when you started talking then about your headscarf, and I had no idea, and it's so important that we are speaking about stuff like this and we are raising awareness of it, because it's massive and you're doing like an amazing job and you're raising all this awareness and you're getting your story out there, which is what we want to do for ourselves as well. So thank you, first of all, for agreeing to come on this podcast and share your experience. But one of the things that interests me is obviously myself and Molly raise awareness through our activism, and we're now young ambassadors for the brain tumour charity and everything else in between. But how do you create awareness within your community, and do you think the Muslim community needs more education? We touched on this before, but do you think they need more education around like epilepsy and cancer, specifically in young people? How do you raise that awareness within your community?
So I'm still on baby steps, yeah. So I've made a public Instagram account, Twitter and Facebook. So I have had people from the community, which I was quite shocked about, that reach out and speak to me and message me. I'm trying to get in touch with my local radio, but because it's Ramadan, they're not really open to calling a lot of people in because people are fasting. Like, I can't even fast because of my cancer. I'm not allowed to fast because some people are medically exempt, which I come under that. So even then, when people see me outside drinking, they're like, "Why is she drinking?" Because I look normal. I don't look like I have cancer. So that's one of the things that they need to be educated on. They think if you have cancer, then you need to be like lying in your bed with like a drip or something, walking around town. So it's just that some of them they need to be educated. I think one of the biggest things is if they spoke about it on Friday prayers. So we call that Jummah. So they have like a big congregation of boys and girls. And they can talk about it then. They talk about a lot of interesting things, but I feel like cancer and epilepsy would be really useful for them. And there's so many people in the community that have passed away of cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer, because it's something too shameful to tell the doctors or get someone to look at. I feel like if they talk about that in the mosque, men and women that are older age or even younger age would think that this is something we need to take seriously and not something that I shouldn't be showing people. I had bowel cancer, and trust me, a lot of people said to me that you shouldn't be going and showing this to the doctor. Ask for a female doctor. But at the time, all I cared about was getting it out, if that makes sense. I feel like if they had, because a lot of people talk about breast cancer and leukemia, not a lot of people talk about brain tumours or epilepsy. So I feel like that's something that they need to like, either be in town or go to mosques, go to community centres. We've got faith centres and we've got bridge projects where it's got like churches, mosques, synagogues, everything one. Maybe big posters, I don't know, something that they can see and they're like, yeah, I have that. Maybe I need to tell the doctors.
So have you faced much, well, you said, sometimes you kind of get that. It's a shock to the system. I've been following along your social media pages since you started them recently, and your openness, like the photos that you'll share and the experiences that you share. Like sometimes I think, oh my gosh, I don't think I can do that. Like that's a really vulnerable thing to do. And, we've already said, and we'll probably say a million times more, we're just so grateful that you're talking to us and you're here on this. And you've mentioned that obviously there's a lot more barriers that we wouldn't even think of or experience that we need to talk about. How do you go about sort of managing that criticism or backlash that comes with that? And have you faced much within that, and kind of like how do you manage it?
Yeah, I'd say criticism a lot. It's just something that I've got used to. I tend to just ignore people. So like my family, especially my mum, she'll get a lot within the community. My dad, he wasn't born here, so he gets it through like the non-English community, if that makes sense. So they'll speak in their own language and say to him, "You shouldn't be telling people. You should tell her to stay quiet. Why is she telling people that she's had bowel cancer? Why is she telling people that she's had skin cancer? What's wrong with her?" My dad has now recently been more open to talk about it. At first, even he was not negative about it, but he was really scared to talk about it, that people might say things to her. Whereas my mum was born here. My mum's been very vocal about it since day one. She's always been like, it's empowering, especially for a woman. So she's like my number one supporter to say to me that speak up about it, because my mum went through a lot whilst I was diagnosed. No one really speaks about the impact on the rest of the family. So one way I've faced criticism is that rather than you coming into my house and telling me that don't do this, have a look at my page and see if you're going through the same things. Because I know a lot of girls have DM'd me like, I've got this on my arm, should I tell the doctors, things like that. And so I'm not bothered if a large community have something to say, as long as the people that I want, that are seeing the things, are reaching out to me, that makes me happy. I don't care. It's just something that needs to be spoken about.
So you've touched on it a few times, Charlene, and I think it is something that we should probably bring up. So we know you from the brain tumour space, like the brain tumour community, but you've mentioned about bowel cancer and skin cancer. What came first? Was the bowel cancer secondary or primary? Like, just kind of give us a bit more detail around how you got to where you are now and how you're now raising this awareness with the brain tumour research charity to get your story out there, to raise that awareness within your community that these illnesses are rough and they are bad, but they happen to everyone of all faiths or ethnic groups.
Yeah. They don't discriminate.
Yeah, like
brain
tumours don't discriminate, and we know this ourselves, and we know the facts, and they're the biggest cancer killer for the under 40 population. It doesn't make a difference on your religion or your faith, and I think that's something that some people don't necessarily realise. I think that is a big a big thing for people to digest in itself.
I've said this, that I was diagnosed when I was 12, 13. At first, my mum and dad, I'd say they didn't really get any support. I was on migraine tablets, and then I would have, not seizures, but my body would go into stroke system or like partial paralysis. And I'd not be able to walk, and the ambulance got so familiar with me, they'd pick me up, put me in the ambulance, take me to the hospital. Then a doctor kept me in, when I was in year 9 in hospital for 6 months. So I didn't see any of my friends, I didn't have any education. I was just chilling in the hospital. That's for 6 months. That had a massive impact on my mum and dad, which a lot of people don't see, that they've been through so much. Dad's only a taxi driver, and he was out for 6 months, so you can see how financially unstable that would have been, especially for the family and single earners and things like that. Mum had, her mental state was just out of control. Like, her daughter was being told she could have a stroke or she's going to die, she's going to go on a ventilator. My little brother and sister, so for and Zina, they were only in year 5 and year 3. So they had a massive impact. And I'm the oldest. So when I was in charge, and they'd be like, they lost a lot of weight, they'd be like, why is she not coming home? So after that, I was in hospital again in year 11 for 3 months, and everyone knows how important it is for year 11 to be in school. And whilst I was in hospital, aunties, so my auntie Tass, Miraz and Nergus, they'd come and live with me, and they're like my number one supporters. Their community, not the Pakistani, but you have Pakistani Punjabis and you have Pakistani Pathans, Pakistani Indians. So they're from a different community within the Pakistani community, and no one speaks about it at all in their community. So they've always pushed me to speak about it. So in year 11, when I came back, I had a lot of backlash in school. Like, a lot of my friends stopped talking to me. A lot of my friends' parents wouldn't speak to me. That she's pretending, she's attention seeking. You shouldn't say that, one day you will catch it. You catch cancer off somebody else. So you could see I was partially bullied in high school. I went through the same thing in college. A lot of people didn't speak to me. I didn't go on to pass my GCSEs and my A-levels. A lot of people didn't speak to me in college and say she's attention seeking, she's faking. But now that I've posted my story on Braintree Research, the same people message me. So it's something that I'm really proud of. Then I went on to go to uni, graduated in uni whilst I was having my chemotherapy and stayed in hospital for a month. Graduated and passed in that, so I was quite proud of that. I did graduate in hospital, but then I managed to get to the ceremony in time, so I didn't wear the hat and everything. So I did that, and then I was given epilepsy to stop me further of doing anything. So my driving was taken off. I didn't get to do my PGC because I would have seizures and I wasn't being placements. Whilst I was doing my degree, I got bowel cancer. So I had a colonoscopy and an endoscopy. I don't know if you know anything about colonoscopy, where they put your pap top and front, I would say. And obviously then a lot of people were like, why is she telling everyone that a male doctor did this? She shouldn't be telling anyone. It's sort of disgusting. Like, why would you do that? Why would you do that? So then when I had surgery, I had to have some stitches as well. And obviously when people would come round, they'd say, you shouldn't be talking about it. Girls don't do that. Like, no, you can't do that. When I had my skin cancer, I had my skin cancer removed from my arm and my stomach, because I had surgery on them. I had that when I was graduated, a year after I graduated. I got melanoma on my stomach and my arm, so I had biopsies and then I had it removed. I was a lot bigger than they initially thought. So after I had that, I posted pictures of my arm, my stomach on my social media. And a lot of people, again, she shouldn't be posting her stomach, her arms, her body. She's a Muslim girl. It should be hidden away. But me posting that has led other people, not just in my family, in my community, to say, oh my God, I've got this mole. Well, I've had this beauty spot and it's got bigger. So I'm doing the right thing for me. And I know God's given me this for me to speak out about. And I've got such a big mouth, so I need to speak about it.
I shouldn't laugh. That was such a serious story. A big mouth.
I don't know how else to say it. Like my brother said, you got a big mouth. Talk about it.
I love that. Goodness me. I'm trying to. We spoke in an episode about how when people go, oh, you're so brave and you're so inspirational. And I'm trying to think of how to react. That is so much. And I think, when obviously we haven't yet called you brave or inspirational, but I would, because you're choosing to put yourself in a line where, you are going to face backlash and you are facing criticism, but you've gone, well, it's worth it for this reason and this reason, it's going to save some lives. And that is the action there that is really brave and is really inspirational. And as we've said, you've said things that to me I've gone, oh my gosh, like that makes so much sense, but I've never had to think about it. I've been in a privileged position to not have to think about it. And you've also said there as well, like before you even said Muslim girl, you said girl. Like, we don't talk about these things, and we've mentioned that before when I talked about my hormonal symptoms and delays in doing things because of embarrassment. But there's a double layered thing there when it comes to
Just
being a
jump in
girl.
that. Then you said hormonal things that come into my brain now. So when I got married to my husband, Junaid, a lot of people said, don't get married to her. She won't be able to have children. She won't be able to have this. She won't be able to have that, blah, blah, blah. I did have a miscarriage, but they were linked to my tumour. But a lot of people automatically said, yeah, it's linked to her cancer. We told you not to get married to her, blah, blah. It gives you hormonal, like my hormones are out of whack. I don't have periods now. I've had my chemotherapy. I've been told that they may come back. But again, talking about periods is something that's so disgusting. You shouldn't be talking about periods. It's not even just within our community. I feel that in general, being a female, you shouldn't be talking about periods. It should be something that you keep to yourself. Like, no one wants to know about it, but why not? Everyone has it. I'm sure everyone's mum or dad. No, dad. That comes out.
No, I'm saying it.
No, like, I mean, people's mums, sisters, whoever has a period, has anything, and it's just really normal and no one really talks about it. They think that it doesn't happen.
I think what you've just said has proper hit the nail on the head, especially for me. So, like, I hate talking about periods. I hate talking about my body and the women's health side of it. But at the end of the day, like, I'm a woman and I get them. And ew, I just call myself a woman. No, hang on. So that's what I'm getting to. But
Right.
Since, like, obviously we know Molly does a lot of activism within this space and talks about women's health, but it's kind of made me realise that I need to talk about it more. And it was literally the other day, I messaged Molly and I was like, can you be the period lady for 2 seconds? I have a question. And it was mad. Like, I'd never really thought about it like that before, but there is so much stigma attached to, like, women's health and periods and everything within that space that we do, like, kind of close off to it. But now I'm like, oh yeah, so by the way, Molly, I'm on this week. My head's up the wall, this, that, and the other, and it should be spoken about more. So I just want to say thanks to you, Molly, for, like, making me realise that I need to be more, to you, that I need to be more aware about it. And, like, Charlene, you've said it yourself, like, there's so much stigma attached to stuff like that. And when you add, I know, the sense of a brain tumour onto that as well, and my periods were affected by my brain tumour, but it wasn't something I realised until later on.
Yeah.
But to be able to speak up about that, I think, again, is really important. So yeah, thanks for both of you guys for allowing me to vent that out into the world.
I'm proud of you, Mel. That's a big deal for you.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I feel like we've made a little sisterhood, or just a little group, and everyone can join. It's so important to talk about, and I think we've got these massive issues. And I'm putting my women's health activist brain on now. We've got all these massive issues, and it can feel a bit helpless. Like, we know the women's health space, even if we don't even think about brain tumours, is quite scary worldwide, and women's rights. The one thing that we can all do, and is free, is talk. And it's a great conversation starter because, like you said, if you've got a question, Mel, and then you feel like you can ask someone and get an answer. Or Charlene, you've mentioned something and you're like, oh, well, my hormones were different because of my brain tumour or my chemotherapy treatment, and someone else will be going through that, and maybe they don't have answers, or they think it's normal, or they think they can't ask. And you could be really, really saving someone, physically, emotionally, mentally, really, really helping them. So I'm all for talking. I love talking. I'll talk periods all day. It's brilliant, and it's important to talk about, for sure.
In terms of, like, women's health, again, I feel like we could talk about this all day. But one question we've got for you, Charlene, is what advice would you give to Muslim women or, like, your community about if they're going through something similar, what advice would you give? What advice would you give to them?
You're so powerful. You're so empowering. And take away the aspect of you're Muslim or you're Sikh or you're Jewish or you're Pakistani or you're white or you're Irish or whatever. You're still a woman. You're still really empowering and you're still powerful, and you should talk about these things as something that you should be proud of, as something that makes you badass, something that you should be proud of. And that in my aspect, obviously I believe in God. So God gave me that to speak about something that could potentially save other people's lives, show people that you're not someone that has a defect, not someone that should be hidden away, someone that, like my mum calls me, like a butterfly, someone that's flying around, showing off to people. Look at me, I have a brain tumor. Look at me, I have epilepsy. So there's so many different metaphors you could use, but you are as equally strong, or probably more strong, than somebody that doesn't have a brain tumor or epilepsy or any form of cancer, because you're going through this, or you've survived it, or you've lived with someone that's got it, and they didn't stop, and they did so many things. So just keep going and use whatever faith or non-faith you're doing and carry on going, because you're just so strong. Come,
I'm gonna cry.
can't think of anything.
Oh, that was so lovely. And
I just, Molly, you just sounded like that. I could
What?
see you going, and I was like,
What?
oh no.
And Molly crying in the background.
also, I mean, it doesn't take a lot to set me off, but wow, that was good. I feel like every woman could do with hearing that. And as you've said, you know, we've got to remove all these titles. And obviously we've very specifically today brought up this conversation. But really, you know, all those titles within that, as you said, we're all people. We're all humans. And in every aspect, even outside of brain tumours and health, everyone needs to be reminded of that, I think. Without getting too controversial, we're all human beings. And we all, you know, we need to stick together. And I feel like women as well, we need to stick together now. And there's so much shame and stigma, even, you know, that Mel and I see. And you've brought up so many new barriers that we didn't think of, we don't experience, we didn't understand. And now I definitely, I don't want to speak for Mel, have walked away with a better understanding. And that, again, it shows the power of conversation. We said this in previous conversations with other guests and between us, that it's talking like a podcast like this, you have no idea who's going to listen to it and whose life it's going to change. And you're definitely doing that, Shahleen. I know. I mean, I don't have the evidence, but I have a good feeling about it. And you've definitely, you know, you've taught me, you've really impacted me, you've made me cry. So, you know, actually I controlled it. I'm proud of myself. I think it's gone now. It might come back up. But yeah, thank you. Just, oh my word. I feel like, you know, when you meet someone and they talk to you and you've got that fire inside of you to do something. So obviously, like, all of us are pretty annoyed and angry about what's gone on, and that can sometimes fuel that fire. But after talking to you now, I'm like, oh my gosh, right, activism, brain tumor awareness month, let's get on it. Like it's really reignited, added to what was already there, listening to you speak. So yeah, I'm gonna stop saying thank you now because I'm taking up so much time, and Mel's gonna be like not happy with me. So
No, but you're both right, and I'm gonna babble on for 2 minutes now. So no, but you've both said it. I can't even describe it any better myself. Like, some people have asked me before if would I change it if I could, like if I could have the power to, I don't know, turn back time and not get sick and not have to go through what I've been through, would I do that? And I've always said no. And I know everyone else has a different opinion on that, but the reason why I've said no is because having that diagnosis and going through what I've been through has allowed me to become who I am now. And even though that's quite deep in itself, I think more than anything, you've both said it, like, I'm still me, I'm still Mel, you're still Molly, and you're still Shahleen, and nothing is ever going to take that away from either of us. And I think that, here she goes again, she's crying. I think that in itself is amazing. Like, we are here, we're alive, we're living our lives, we're raising all this awareness, and I just think it's amazing to be able to do that. And like, I can feel myself going higher in my chair as I'm speaking about it, because I'm so like, yeah, like, what the hell? Like, we're here, we're alive. Like, let's use that and use that fire inside us to show that to other people. And yeah, I've done this, I've done that. If none of that would have happened, we wouldn't be sat here right now. We wouldn't be sat here having this conversation about how important it is to talk about stuff like this. So thank you so much for coming on to our podcast to talk about it from your cultural perspective, and how you've even like managed epilepsy and bowel cancer and skin cancer all on top of a brain tumor diagnosis. Like, a brain tumor diagnosis in itself is massive, but to have everything else on top of that as well, I think is the reason, like, why we wanted to get you on, because there's so much to your story, Charlene, and there's so much more about you that people need to know. And yeah, it's I'm so excited to like see what you do with this and see how far you go and see what you can do within this space to raise that awareness. And oh yeah, I could carry on, so that's my 2 minutes off. But yeah, honestly, I'm over the moon with this, and yeah, I think we should all be very proud and grateful for where we are today and what we've managed to achieve to get to where we are.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for inviting me on. And it's been so, like, I'm so grateful, and it's been an honor to speak to you too. And I just hope someone reads this podcast and thinks that they're empowering, and even if it is from my culture or isn't, they're still strong. And looking at you two, they should be even more stronger.
Michelle's husband is going to be bawling at this episode. He's going to be crying his eyes out.
I feel like we maybe need to pre-warn him at the Twilight Talk. But honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, Charlene. So thank you for taking the time to speak to us and raise awareness about your illness and everything else that you're doing within your community to raise that better and to get that understanding out there. So thank you for allowing us to share your story.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
As always, thank you to the listeners. Without you, the podcast isn't possible. You can catch all of season 1, which is Mel and I blabbering on Spotify at the GlioBabes. On YouTube, you will find the videos of our interviews continuing to be put up again at the GlioBabes. And follow us over on Instagram and now TikTok as well. You guessed it, the GlioBabes. We will also put all the support as per usual on the show notes / comments on however it works on YouTube. Please do reach out for support and help. And know that we're here to talk to as well, so drop us a message anytime.
Charlene, you said it before, I'm going to say it again, you're a badass.